Welcome to Storytelling and Beyond, where powerful stories unfold not just through words, but through emotions that linger long after the last line is heard. Today's journey begins in a prestigious private school nestled in the heart of suburban England, where pride, power, and prejudice silently brew behind polished doors. Miss Victoria Langford, the school's owner, was the epitome of elegance and arrogance. Clad in tailored suits, her heels echoed down the polished corridors like a warning bell. Her sharp eyes scanned every inch of her domain with disdainful judgment. She wasn't known for kindness, she was known for control. To her, staff were not people with passion and dignity, but tools, replaceable and disposable. As she made her usual inspection round one frosty morning, she paused outside the staff room. The air inside buzzed with low, weary chatter, teachers discussing lesson plans, a janitor warming his hands, the cafeteria staff sipping lukewarm tea. With a haughty flick of her wrist, she pushed open the door. Her gaze locked on Mr. Thomas, the elderly janitor, whose shoes were frayed and soles nearly worn through. "Still wearing those?" she scoffed. "This is a school, not a shelter." He looked down, saying nothing, his dignity intact but weathered. Next, she turned to Mrs. Jane, the kind-hearted cook whose food every child adored. "The smell of curry is overpowering," Victoria muttered as she walked past, making a face. "Try not to bring the kitchen with you." The room fell into silence, discomfort hanging heavy. Teachers exchanged helpless glances. No one dared speak. She strolled into a classroom where a new teacher, nervous and young, was scribbling lesson notes on the board. "Still using a marker board?" Victoria mocked. "We're in the age of technology, not the Stone Age." Her words weren't advice, they were darts. And though they cut deep, no one cried out. They simply endured. In the quiet that followed her exit, a heavy truth settled among the staff. This wasn't just a job, it was survival. And despite their pain, they all carried on. But what none of them knew was that life had its own way of teaching. And for Miss Victoria Langford, that lesson was just beginning. A cold drizzle blanketed the morning as staff gathered in the conference room for the weekly meeting. The atmosphere was always the same, tense, formal, and filled with unspoken fear. No one sipped coffee. No one whispered side jokes. They just waited for Miss Victoria Langford to enter and set the temperature of the hour. She arrived precisely at 10, her expression unreadable, her coat damp from the outside mist. Without a greeting, she opened her notebook, flipped a page with dramatic sharpness, and began reading notes no one had seen before. "I want to start with an observation," she said, looking up slowly, her eyes landing on Mr. Harold Bennett, the senior English literature teacher. "Our curriculum, particularly in literature, is stale. Antiquated. Mr. Bennett, how long do you plan on romanticizing the past? Are we preparing thinkers or museum guides?" The words hit like stones wrapped in silk. Mr. Bennett, a gentle, well-spoken man in his early 60s, sat quietly. His salt and pepper hair, tweed blazer, and well-worn leather satchel had been his signature for decades. He had taught generations of students, pouring heart and soul into every word of Shakespeare and every metaphor in Frost. "I was under the impression," Victoria continued, "that modern students need innovation, not bedtime poetry from the 1800s. Perhaps you've grown too comfortable." The silence in the room was deafening. No one moved. Mr. Bennett didn't defend himself. He looked at Victoria with eyes that had seen hundreds of students come and go, many of whom returned years later with tearful gratitude for what his words had given them. Instead of answering, he gently closed the file in front of him, stood up with calm dignity, and left the room without a word. His quiet exit spoke louder than any protest. His presence seemed to leave a vacuum behind, a chill that even the heater couldn't warm. Victoria watched him go, lips pursed, perhaps expecting defiance. Instead, she was left with a silence that made her shift in her chair for the first time in months. The staff remained still. Inside each heart sat a strange mixture of rage, sorrow, and helplessness. Mr. Bennett had been more than a teacher, he was their pillar. And though Victoria had humiliated him, she hadn't broken him. Outside, the drizzle had turned to a steady rain. The drops slid down the windows like silent tears no one dared to shed. But the storm, as they say, was only just beginning. And the calm before it was ending now. The air in Victoria's office was thick with unspoken emotion. Eleanor's calm departure had left behind a silence louder than any shouting match. The letter from Mr. Bennet still lay open on the desk, the words echoing in Victoria's mind like a distant memory she'd long tried to forget. She stared out the large window overlooking the now empty schoolyard. The rain had softened into a drizzle, and the gray clouds hung low like a mirror to her mood. The next morning, the school felt different. Subtly, almost imperceptibly, but different. Teachers exchanged longer glances. Students walked more quietly, and the usual morning announcements came without Victoria's sharp, rehearsed tone. It was as if a hush had settled over Langford Academy, not one of fear, but of reflection. Miss Claire Thompson stood at the doorway of her classroom, waiting. When the bell rang, she didn't begin with math formulas or grammar drills. Instead, she shared a story. A real one. About Mr. Bennet and how he had stayed after class one winter evening to help a struggling student with dyslexia. The student had since become a poet. Claire's voice cracked at the end, and for once, her class didn't fidget or whisper. They listened, truly listened. Elsewhere in the school, stories like that began surfacing like blooming wildflowers through concrete. A janitor recalled how Mr. Bennet used to bring him coffee and ask about his daughter. A shy boy from grade 8 left a note in the library, thanking him for encouraging his drawing. The note ended with, "You saw me when no one else did." All these little pieces formed something bigger, a quiet revolution of memory, emotion, and overdue gratitude. Meanwhile, Victoria tried to resume her daily routines, calls, reports, financial reviews, but she found herself pausing. The words blurred. The numbers no longer impressed her the same way. That flicker inside her was now growing into a flame she could no longer ignore. Later that afternoon, she visited the hallway where Mr. Bennet's classroom once stood. The door was closed, the room dark. She stepped inside. It smelled of old books and chalk dust. She looked around at the posters still hanging, the ones she had once deemed too sentimental. Quotes about courage, kindness, and humanity. Words she had dismissed in her pursuit of prestige. As she stood alone in that empty room, something cracked within her. Not loudly. But enough. Enough to let something real in. Victoria couldn't sleep that night. The wind outside howled through the trees, rattling the windows of her luxury home, but the storm inside her was louder. She wandered from room to room, her silk robe trailing behind her, her mind replaying every moment of the last few days, the resignation letter, the echoing silence of Mr. Bennet's classroom, the stories from staff and students that had peeled back the illusion she had built around herself. She stood in her study, a space once filled with ambition and pride. Framed certificates and glossy awards lined the shelves. Newspaper articles featuring her smiling face, Langford Academy, the private school revolution, Victoria Holloway, a visionary in education, stared back at her like ghosts of a former self. For the first time, she looked at them not with pride but with a piercing sense of hollowness. At dawn, she returned to the school. She didn't announce her arrival, didn't summon her assistant or ask for coffee. Instead, she walked the halls quietly, unnoticed. The building smelled faintly of floor polish and morning air. She paused by the staff room, hearing soft laughter and casual conversation. Once, those voices would have triggered her irritation, idle chatter, time wasted. Now, they sounded like life. She stepped inside. The room went still. Every teacher turned toward her, surprised. Some stood up instinctively. Others avoided her eyes. Claire sat near the back, her arms crossed, watching silently. Victoria didn't raise her voice. She didn't put on a show of control. Instead, she looked smaller than anyone had ever seen her, tired, raw, and something else, human. "I was wrong," she said, her voice low but steady. "About so many things." No one interrupted. "I built this school with a vision for excellence. But somewhere along the way, I started measuring that excellence by numbers and reputations. I thought control meant success. I thought silence from others meant respect. But Mr. Bennet..." Her voice broke. "He showed me something else. You all did. And I didn't see it." She looked around the room, meeting each gaze, even the hard ones.
I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want to change.
Not just policies or job titles, but how I listen.
How I lead.
Silence hung in the air again, but it was different now, charged with emotion, a cautious hope blooming underneath years of resentment.
Claire finally spoke, her voice gentle but firm. Then start by listening now. And Victoria did.
For the next hour, she sat quietly as one by one, the teachers spoke. They spoke of pressure, fear, exhaustion, and missed opportunities. But they also shared dreams, what Langford could still become. A place not just for brilliant minds but for kind hearts.
A place that remembered what education truly meant. Victoria didn't interrupt. She didn't defend.
She simply listened. And with every word, the weight of her mistakes didn't crush her, it changed her. Something inside her shifted.
Not a dramatic epiphany, but a quiet beginning. A door opening.
The early morning sun painted the sky in soft gold as Victoria Holloway stood in front of the Langford Academy gates. They looked different now, less like a symbol of prestige and more like the entrance to something fragile and alive. She hesitated before stepping through them, her heart a mix of guilt, resolve, and something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. The halls were quieter than she remembered.
No clip-clop of her designer heels echoing down the marble floors, no bustling staff scattering out of her way.
She walked slowly, absorbing everything with a new pair of eyes. There were student drawings posted outside classrooms, something she would have once called clutter. Today, she paused to admire them. One showed a group of teachers holding hands. Beneath it, a child had scrawled, "Thank you for making me feel smart and safe."
Her throat tightened. She continued past the office, past the trophy cabinets and spotless display boards. Her feet took her to the staff room almost instinctively. It was the same room where, not long ago, silence had choked the air whenever she entered. Today, she pushed the door gently and stepped inside. Conversation stopped. All eyes turned to her. Teachers mid-coffee froze.
A few looked down quickly, others met her gaze with wary eyes.
Claire was there too, sitting in the corner with her arms folded, expression unreadable. Victoria cleared her throat. "I know I'm the last person you expected to see here this early."
The room stayed quiet.
She took a breath and stepped further inside. "I'm not here to give a speech or make announcements. I just need to say something. And I hope you'll hear me." She didn't stand tall like she used to.
No commanding posture or carefully rehearsed tone.
She looked tired. Honest. Human.
"I've spent the past few days thinking about what this school was supposed to be and what I've turned it into.
I thought order meant excellence.
That control meant progress.
But somewhere along the line, I stopped seeing the people who made this place what it is. I stopped seeing you."
She looked around the room, making eye contact with each person, even those who looked away.
"I let my fear of failure become bigger than my love for education. I let my pride silence your voices.
I turned this school into a mirror of my own ambition instead of a place where everyone, teachers, staff, students, could thrive.
I see that now.
And I'm so deeply sorry."
Still, no one moved. But the silence wasn't icy.
It was charged, as if waiting to see whether this was real or just another performance.
"I know apologies don't fix what's broken. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to listen. To learn. To do things differently."
Claire unfolded her arms slowly. Her eyes were tired, but not cold. "Then let's start here," she said simply.
"With listening."
Victoria nodded, her voice catching slightly.
"Please. I'm ready." One by one, the teachers began to speak. Not with anger, but with years of unspoken truths.
They talked about burnout, about fear of judgment, about how the warmth had slowly been drained from the school culture. But they also spoke of ideas, small changes that could bring kindness back into the system, community into the classrooms, and joy back into the work they loved.
Victoria didn't interrupt once. She didn't argue or explain. She just listened.
And with every word, she felt layers of arrogance and distance peel away. Somewhere in the back of the room, a teacher made a quiet joke, and someone laughed. Claire joined in. For the first time in a long time, there was lightness in the staff room. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fixed. But it was a start. Outside, the school bell rang. A new day had begun. And this time, Victoria Holloway wasn't standing above everyone else, she was walking with them. Thank you for watching this story on Storytelling and Beyond. If this emotional journey touched your heart or reminded you of the power of humility and second chances, please subscribe and join us as we continue sharing inspiring stories that make you think, feel, and grow.